It's Tuesday, April 3rd, 2012, and this is another edition of Infowars Nightly News. Coming up tonight on the Infowars Nightly News, we talk to former Treasury agent and IRS whistleblower Joe Bannister about the government's attempts to silence him. Then, Mitt Romney's wife had blind trust invested in Goldman Sachs' sex trafficking fund connected to sex slavery. Poland breaks its silence about CIA's secret prison. The UN's up to its same old dirty tricks with more sick and disgusting activities trying to brainwash children into accepting abortions and more. We'll also chronicle the latest TSA outrages. We take you now to the Infowars.com News Center. First off tonight, let's look at, well, something that isn't a shocker to Infowars.com viewers, but is shocking people in the UK media and the US media. The story is starting to get really big. Daily Mail reports Mitt Romney's wife had blind trust invested in Goldman Sachs' sex trafficking fund. Now, the issue here is, and I'm not defending Mitt Romney's wife, it is a blind trust. It's kind of like Michael Moore invested in Halliburton. I can believe that she wasn't paying attention. But the real issue is hiding in plain view here. Why does Goldman Sachs have a fund connected to not just prostitution, but also sex slaves, which is a huge business the UN's involved in? DynCorp, Halliburton have been caught involved in it and never get in trouble. I mean, I challenge you to just go do some basic researches like Halliburton, DynCorp's sex slavery, child sex slavery, UN sex slavery, children's sex slavery. You won't get hundreds of articles, you'll get thousands. And it's like, oh, well, if some kidnapper grabs a kid on his own and rapes him, it's the end of the world, all over the news, shutting down whole cities, searching for him. And we should. People that hurt the innocents are the lowest form of trash. But when it's governments and big corporations, it's like, yeah, she was invested in the sex slave rings, the white slavery. How dare her? And I do think that it's immoral to put something in a blind trust and just claim, oh, I don't know what I'm investing in. It is a big cop-out. So it's a big strike against her and Mittens, Romney, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. But the larger issue is, why is it the media asking, why does Goldman Sachs, one of the most criminal organizations on the face of the world, top of the pyramid of the New World Order, pushing carbon taxes, all of it, why aren't they in trouble for being invested in all of this? So that's just a small tidbit of it. It reminds me of when Senator Graham from Texas got caught, financing porno movies, and he was Mr. Christian, Mr. Conservative. But that was with full-grown women. And so I didn't make that big a deal out of it. But this, when you're talking about sex slavery, which is these poor women in Europe think they're getting a job, they get kidnapped basically, pimps control them, but now they're doing it with underage people, those involved in this need to be executed. The only problem is you can't trust a government that's this criminal and who has been caught framing innocent people in the past. You can't trust them to carry out the death penalty. So I say lock them up, or put all these vampires on an island by themselves where there's no children for them to abuse. Incredible. And because we've gotten onto this subject, I thought I'd show you here with the document cam. What this illustrates is the same attitude of too big to fail with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan creating derivatives and then demanding government with our tax money prop them up. And then they pose as our saviors and say, give up more of our rights. What it points out is too big to fail is also too big to go to jail. And how is Goldman Sachs getting away with this illegal sex trafficking? I mean, even if these women were of age, it's still illegal. But these are people that are being kidnapped. This is incredible. So hidden in plain view. I thought I'd dovetail that with a few articles that have come out that show these very same groups are above the law. You got Wells Fargo, that's Warren Buffett, and its subsidiary, Wachovia. Look at this number, $378.4 billion. $378.4 billion in laundered money over 2 years. Remember, this came out over a year ago, and no one even got in trouble. When it became an issue, they had to pay a 1.3% fine. So that's like I rob a bank and steal $1 million, and I pay a couple $1,000 basically to the cops. I mean, you're going to keep robbing banks. And it's just a few banks that are able to do this. 6 mega global banks, okay? And the top ones out of the U.S. are J.P. Morgan Chase, number one. Then you've got the big brokerage outfit, investment bank, that does the dirty work, like it's Darth Vader to Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Palpatine is J.P. Morgan Chase. Goldman Sachs is the Darth Vader enforcer. And then you go down the line, you got Bank of America, you got Citibank, you've got Wells Fargo, and then you've got a consortium of Rothschild banks over in Europe. But really, it's 6 big conglomerates, and they are above the law. Here it is: banks financing Mexican gangs admitted in Wells Fargo deal, owning the aircraft, running it all, the weapons, everything. Okay? This government is an illegitimate joke. Do I like people that are involved in the drug trade? No, I think it's seedy and horrible. And the criminals that are involved in the drug trade locally would be involved in other things if drugs were decriminalized. So I get putting them in jail, but it's still all a fraud because the big conduit bringing the drugs in is the big mega banks. This is the New World Order. It'd be so easy just to arrest these head bankers, shut down their Federal Reserve System, restore the republic, end the empire. Either it's that or let them implode everything. Okay, here's another one. Wachovia to settle money laundering case, again, for $160 million on $370-plus bill. And my mind can't even get around 370-plus bill. I always say 276 bill until I go look the article up. It's like my mind automatically downgrades, for whatever reason, the sheer magnitude of what we're dealing with. All right, let's shift gears now to our next report, away from the sex slavery the UN and the globalists run, to Poland. Breaks its silence about secret CIA prison. You know, 3 months ago, there was a Washington Post article out of the Carolinas, and they were saying, well, locals are tired of people being taken to the local torture dungeon at the airport and flown out of the country. There was a concentration camp article hidden in plain view in the Washington Post. They were reporting on it like they were talking about, oh, some locals don't like it. They got black sites, that means secret ghost sites, in Poland, in Romania, in Egypt, in Jordan, in Israel, and they're taking citizens to them. And the reason Obama's coming out and admitting this now, yeah, we'll kill you, yeah, we'll torture you, is because people in government are like, this is illegal. And they're like, no, we put it on the news. Kind of like, yeah, it came out, we're growing the opium. It was on Fox News. Oh, we grow the opium. It's patriotic. We catch you using it, you go to prison, though, back in America. See, this is all a psychological game where the criminals go, hey, we're getting caught here. Well, just admit we've got prisons all over. Secret kidnap prisons where we torture you and get you to do whatever we want, or test vaccines on you. Europe, polls talk about CIA prison break silence. And they're like, hey, we used to team up with America against the Soviet tyranny, but we've seen this before. We're not going along with your tyranny. Well, it's not America tyranny. It's banker tyranny. Americans, on average, are good, hardworking people, but they're extremely naive and believe that we're the good guys. Because in history, overall, we've been the good guys. Overall. Doesn't mean we're perfect, but compared to a lot of other countries, we've been the best there is. But because we made all that wealth through liberty, we became the magnet for all the criminals because we were the big, powerful engine. We've now been taken over. So good job to the Poles, who really appreciated America helped liberate them from Russian domination. But now, 20 years later, they're waking up. For years, the notion that Poland could allow CIA to operate a secret prison in a remote lake region was treated as a crackpot idea by the country's politicians, journalists, and the public. Yeah, they just called it a conspiracy theory. But now the AP, Reuters, Daily Mail all report that the government now admits that that is indeed going on. Again, oh, the Federal Reserve's private. Ha, 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 they're kooks. Now it's admitted. Oh, we're going to secretly arrest you. Ha, 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 kooks. Now admitted. Oh, the government brings drugs in. Ha, 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 kooks. Now admitted. See, when you hear them say, oh, kook, nut job, crazy, that's usually just a label to shut down debate, okay? Here's another one. Country rises up in support of New Hampshire hero. A 61-year-old New Hampshire man with a single-handedly captured a serial burglar in his town of Farmington was arrested and charged with a felony and forced to surrender all his guns for firing one shot into the ground in the woods, which resulted in the capture of the serial burglar who had been terrorizing neighbors in his small New England town to satisfy his drug habit. Again, the system is scared to death of citizens standing up for themselves. Whether George Zimmerman was right or wrong, they're picking him because they think he can be proven he's wrong to demonize anybody else delivering justice. because there's a crime wave in this country because of the Depression. And the system wants to use that crime wave to destabilize things, to call for big government. They don't want the 5 million guns being bought and the people arming themselves every month to have the idea that we can defend ourselves. So good news that folks are standing up for that fellow who folks are trying to demonize. Okay, continuing here, another broken Obama promise. How do you know what Obama's going to do? It's a very clear roadmap. It's 100% accurate. He will do the opposite of what he promised to do. Would hire no lobbyist, hired more than anybody ever hired. Would have a more transparent government than anybody, the most secretive ever. Would support journalist rights and whistleblowers. Arrest hundreds of whistleblowers of government corruption. Arrest mainstream media people and throw them in prison for talking to whistleblowers that expose corruption. I mean, just off the charts. No one's secret arrest, would end torture, expanded wars, everything. Said he'd give you socialist health care. Not that that's good. Gave you fascist health care written by the healthcare industry to cut the type of health care you get and force people to buy the crap care. Excuse me. Well, he promised to kick the feds out of the states, that he would follow the 10th Amendment and let states decriminalize marijuana for all its hundreds and hundreds of medical uses. Certainly it's abused, but if people want to do that, that's their issue. The drug war only makes the prices go up, the quality go down, and gives money to criminals. You decriminalize, you can tax it. All those arguments are there. I mean, even Pat Robertson understands this now. I mean, if Pat Robertson gets it, you'd think Obama could get this. But see, it's about money and federal power. So he did a 180, and they are SWAT teaming all over the country, shutting down legal dispensaries that under state, county, and city rules are churning out tons of profits into the tax rolls. And now they have raided one of the big events that was just introducing people as a job fair into it, not just marijuana with the cannabinoids in it that actually has the medical effects, but people that were also going to start growing it and being involved in making clothing out of it. And it's much better, softer, lasts longer than cotton, which is one big reason they banned even non-THC marijuana back in the 30s, was because it was competing with the cotton industry. So then they sent in a bunch of feds, a bunch of idiots that got off on being on power trips. Why don't you go bust John Corzine? Why don't you go bust people kidnapping little kids like Goldman Sachs? No, you're not going to do that. It's all about the power trip of these guys, their little federal outfits, all being tough. You people are a joke. People watch too much TV when you're growing up, what it means to be a Fed. Being a Fed, on average, is being an errand boy for the mega banks raping this country and the world. It's like going and joining the Communist Party under Stalin or something. I mean, you're a joke. You've disgraced your family name on average. You're like, no, we haven't. Well, then speak out against everything else. If you're not doing what Joe Bannister did and other people who are honorable, then you're a joke, okay? I don't care if you're not committing crimes. If you're sitting in this corrupt system right now, not speaking up against it, you're aiding and abetting. You're an accomplice. You understand that. You supposedly took criminology, or what were you, smoking pot during that part of class, and now you're busing folks that smoke pot? I see these cops all the time who'll bust a 18-year-old who's dating his 17-year-old sweetheart, and they'll charge them with pedophilia and statutory rape and make them a sex offender for life. Meanwhile, the government and different groups are kidnapping 3-year-old kids for snuff films on record, and nothing's done. See, that's how you do it. You go bust somebody that hadn't really committed a crime, but then you aid and abet the real crimes. That's what I'm talking about. This is so sick. And then I asked police, even on air, I've asked them before, who were involved in arresting people for statutory rape when there are people who are like 1 year apart. You see it in the news all the time. That, a guy was a senior, graduates, his girlfriend's now a senior, he's in college, they're dating, she's 17, he goes to jail. And then a lot of times, even though the guy's a sex offender, now they're married. Again, this is how they target people that aren't criminals. All these laws are written to be selectively enforced. In fact, another article that I want to go to right now, DHS to grant illegal aliens unlawful presence waivers. This is what Obama said he wanted to do. Sheriffs have said this has been going on. And by the way, cops are getting paid off to issue these. The feds are. They'll do staged arrests sometimes of illegals working at meat packing plants, and they drive them over to the local ICE facility and give them green cards on the spot. Then they just use this to selectively harass people. So these documents have come out. Just total criminality by government. Another example of selective enforcement right there. News. Coming up tonight on the Infowars Nightly News, we talked to former Treasury agent and IRS whistleblower Joe Bannister about the government's attempts to silence him. Then, Mitt Romney's wife had blind trust invested in Goldman Sachs' sex trafficking fund connected to sex slavery. Poland breaks its silence about CIA's secret prison. The UN's up to its same old dirty tricks with more sick and disgusting activities trying to brainwash children into accepting abortions and more. We'll also chronicle the latest TSA outrages. We take you now to the Infowars.com News Center. First off tonight, let's look at, well, something that isn't a shocker to Infowars.com viewers, but is shocking people in the UK media and the US media. The story is starting to get really big. Daily Mail reports Mitt Romney's wife had blind trust invested in Goldman Sachs' sex trafficking fund. Now, the issue here is, and I'm not defending Mitt Romney's wife, it is a blind trust. It's kind of like Michael Moore invested in Halliburton. I can believe that she wasn't paying attention. But the real issue of the news, shutting down whole cities, searching for them, and we should. People that hurt the innocents are the lowest form of trash. But when it's governments and big corporations, it's like, yeah, she was invested in the sex slave rings, the white slavery. How dare her? And I do think that it's immoral to put something in a blind trust and just claim, oh, I don't know what I'm investing in. It is a big cop-out. So it's a big strike against her and Mittens, Romney, Mr. Goody Two-Shoes. But the larger issue is, why is it the media asking, why does Goldman Sachs, one of the most criminal organizations in the It's Tuesday, April 3rd, 2012, and this is another edition of Infowars Nightly News. It's hiding in plain view here. Why does Goldman Sachs have a fund connected to not just prostitution, but also sex slaves, which is a huge business the UN's involved in? DynCorp, Halliburton have been caught involved in it and never get in trouble. I mean, I challenge you to just go do some basic researches like Halliburton, DynCorp's sex slavery, child sex slavery, UN sex slavery, children's sex slavery. You won't get hundreds of articles. You'll get thousands. And it's like, oh, well, if some kidnapper grabs a kid on his own and rapes him, it's the end of the world all